Hello and welcome to our 2023 prediction reading. You have guest psychic here, Amber Wilcox, and I. We both are psychics, have been doing this work for over a decade now. I do it professionally full time, and Amber does it full time on the side and has been steadily going at it for just as long. And we normally do soul personality readings, taking a look at who you are as a soul and reading information that's pertinent to your growth, purpose, path, past lives, all sorts of fun stuff, seeing the energy around you, relationships, everything of that nature. But for today, we wanted to do something a little special and take a look at the energy for 2023. And when we take a look at the energy for the future, we're looking at it from the present moment. It's from being so present, so tapped in here and now that we see what the most likely paths forward look like. We're not using, cards or astrology or anything like that. We're just using our raw intuition. We'll close our eyes, take a look at the energy, and popcorn back and forth as to what we see going on for next year. So welcome, guest psychic Amber, and
Thank you.
let's go ahead and begin. So when I first pull up the energy for 2023, we'll start with a general overview and then get into more specifics. But one thing that I see is this energy of, you could say immense growth, or you could say it is immense strain. And I see it particularly around the dichotomies on Earth, things where people are polarized, they're on one side or the other. I just see tension in general with that. And to me, it looks like there will be some pretty deeply emotional ongoings happening in the world, and that both on a personal level, but also on a worldly level, there will be a bit of chaos and a bit of, having to stick to your practice or something that helps you to feel good, feel healthy, feel stable. Looks like that'll be really important in 2023, because a big part of what humanity's learning is that while things might get a little bit more chaotic, you have choice over your reality and what you're experiencing. Even if the same thing is happening to all of us, we're all experiencing it from a different viewpoint, a different lens. And so I see that personal growth and development will be a big part of what helps people get through this next year.
Mm. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of similar energy. For me, the strongest imagery that's coming up is kind of this. It's kind of one of those nets that are like either above water or suspended in the trees. And it's this feeling of being unanchored and on shaky territory, but you are being held, but it's having to have a lot more trust and faith in the foundations that you're laying so that you can rely on this netting as you're kind of navigating really unfamiliar, uncharted spaces. And I'm also seeing kind of other people recognizing that everyone's kind of on this net together and becoming a lot more aware of how we're connected, and also just increasing our empathy as well. It's a very much like, oh, you're feeling this as deeply as I'm feeling it. Like that's kind of a relief in a kind of beautiful, uncertain way. But I'm seeing that as one of the top themes coming through so far.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Some of the other things I'm noticing just right off the bat is there's an energy of there's a lot of energy around people's crown chakras, that energy center on the top of their head. And really, ever since COVID came into the picture, humanity's been in a big crown chakra growth spurt, which the crown chakra has all to do with your own information, knowing who you are, knowing your spiritual truths, but also just knowingness in general, right? And so the things I see for 2023, there'll be a next step with that, where people will have to have their own discernment. They'll have to be able to get their own answers. There'll be contradicting information. There'll be a lot of kind of smoke and mirrors, people trying to control conversations and how things look. And a lot of that will start to fall apart on itself, and things will be more and more exposed, including, to me, it kind of looks like the way that celebrities are kind of tied to bigger corporations or organizations that are pushing things that are maybe a little bit more evil or a little bit less helpful to everybody else. Some of that will start to be uncovered, but at a more personal level, there'll be a lot of that, of not just being able to trust what you're told and just kind of blindly navigate life based off of the sort of structures that we always accepted, like whether that's with your own health, with medical information, whether that's with your own religious or spiritual information, or whether that's even in regards to just what's true in reality, what's possible, what's happening all around you. And the people that get stuck in sort of the ego side of that and really hold on to it, it'll kind of feel like everything's a lie and it's all falling apart and it's kind of painful. Whereas people who are able to let go a little bit more and tap into their own intuition, they'll be able to find their answers and keep their cool. So I see a lot of that happening, as well as just a lot of energy around communication in general, and where people being able to communicate with each other will be really important. Being able to have clear communication, being able to communicate across country lines, communicate to people that are in very different situations. And to me, it looks like there's sort of a purge of people's fifth chakras and their communication space, where some of the old lies and stories and things are going to be starting to clear out of there. But it almost looks like somewhat of a pressure in that area, where it's almost trying to cover up people's ability to communicate. And it looks like that'll even take an effect on people's respiratory health, and yeah, in the body in general. Looks like it'll clog things up a little bit for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I'm seeing a lot of interesting developments happening in technology, communication, and spirit, and kind of how those are coming together. I see some people, this image of like their own crystal ball kind of looking in, and then also this feeling of this double-sided mirror of like seeing someone look back. And I think a lot's going to come to the surface, even more so about surveillance technology. I see almost like these FBI agents like in a room looking at these TVs, kind of seeing, but then I'm also seeing people like astral kind of projecting, and it's just like this two-way kind of spying, getting all of a sudden seeing that, oh, they're looking at us, we're looking at them. This is kind of weird and creepy, but also interesting, where some people are using that technology, some people are using their spiritual technology. And I think there's this interesting blur when people get curious about, okay, what could we do next with this? What could be the connection? And that may start in kind of a very scary, fear-based sort of military tactics. But I think in the media, when there's stories that come to light about this, it can kind of get people's own imaginations working and getting them really curious. So I see something almost like a really informative documentary coming out, where it educates a lot of people in like a really big way of stuff that they had no idea would be even possible for them to tap into. It's almost a bit of a Stranger Things energy. Like our subconscious have been kind of getting primed by Hollywood in a way, and there's blending of future storytelling and also co-creating with the universe what our future is going to be. So it's like these things that have been really popular in the media, really popular stories, we're actually going to see more of them actually emerging, and people starting to get more ready for, you know, hints and pieces of that coming to life is something that I'm seeing. And I think that does tie into the communication space Brandon was mentioning. And I actually see different spots in the time where we might have a complete communication breakdown, where maybe certain channels go offline or banned, or there's a lot that is like blocking information. and also like new channels coming in too, and people getting creative, and also old school too, like with flip phones or radios, and kind of having a little bit of a renaissance in like old school communication as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. To me, a lot of what I was seeing come up as you were talking about all of that is both just how true all of that is, but also just this overall energy of control, along all those different areas. And where to me, it looks like there'll be a control battle for power at a military sense, a control battle for finances at more of a governmental sense, but even just some big capitalist organizations will be kind of a part of that too. And even just in currency in general and the future of currency, but then control also to where people are, where they go, the ease at which they can travel and get from place to place, and the ease at which they can communicate. And to me, it looks like there will be people finding alternative ways to get places, alternative places to communicate. They'll be coming up with the new things as the control energy tries to squash what they don't like and what's not working. But then to me, there's also an energy that I would call more of one of a unseen sort of spiritual control game that's going on. And it looks like where certain uh, non-physical entities have tried to control the masses and sort of program them, condition them, not let them to be able to see for themselves certain truths that are happening within the world and even within themselves, and where they've kind of tried to hold people in pain and suffering and kind of use them in a sense, not like a battery necessarily, but definitely benefiting off of their unconsciousness and programmability and their despair in general, those sort of things. And I see that there will be more progress in breaking free of that, and that things will start to, not totally make sense, that it'll be a little bit like a paradigm shift, not a, huge full blown, like we wake up and the world is completely different, but slowly, incrementally, step by step, that there'll be changes in that. So we'll see changes in people's psyche, how people are administrating medication, how people are working with psychology, how people are working with just mental and emotional help in general. To me, it looks like sort of along the lines of what Amber was saying, that there'll be breakthroughs in technology, both for medicine and tech, that will start to become more in alignment with the spiritual tech and spiritual truths that have been known for a while now, and that it'll start to paint more and more of a holistic picture for health and well-being. And there'll be a lot of sort of false information and things trying to break that up and making it really hard to figure out what's right and what's not right. But I do see that moving forward in a way that's it's almost like some of the bigger powers that play in those industries, in the technology and medicine and food, as people are becoming more spiritually aware and more aware of holistic solutions, they're trying to keep up so they can create their own copy version of it. That way they can profit off of it still and still have a level of control on it. It's like, okay, if we're going to lose the game, then this is our best bet to take it back, is to profit off it, to make something better, to make something that people think they need to rely on more. So they're kind of trying to use their old tactics in a, for the way things are moving forward. But it looks to me like people will be more wise to that, and that they're not going to be as dumb as those powers that be want them to be. And so it'll start to lose its effect a little bit more this year.
Yes, so many interesting images coming up as you're describing all of that. One of the strongest ones that keeps popping up for me is this image of like VR headsets, but like everyone's wearing them, and there's people in like a factory almost, like they're just trying to program people. And I think it's this, the interesting thing I think it's coming up is like AI, and it's like, all right, is this technology going to follow this control paradigm, or is it going to actually uplift people in like a really surprising way? And it's kind of just this relationship with that and what we're going to do with it, which is really cool to see. It's definitely kind of this dark night of the soul. Like it seems like all the odds are stacked against people, or like everything's crumpling, and things seem like even more intense. But then the flip side of it is I see like even more strength and even more support than you could ever imagine. And one of those images that is coming up is like mushrooms and their intelligence and their connectivity, and finding ways to kind of mimic nature in technology when it comes to banding together. I'm seeing that there's going to be a really strong need for people banding together in like communities or in protests. And I think we're finally going to start to rely and trust each other a lot more than we have these past few years. I see a lot of people becoming exhausted with the constant battling and back and forth, and realizing it's not really serving them to be at war with each other. It's not really what they're after, and finding, oh wow, I can connect to my fellow man in like a new way that's going to bring more strength and positivity than it has the past few years, where it may have felt like, oh, there's so much distrust, there's so much polarity. It's kind of like this veil drops and you're like, oh wow, we were like on the same side of this like the whole time. So that's really interesting to see.
Mhm. Yeah, I was noticing that there'll be some more strain in the workforce, where people will sort of realize their own worth. And it's kind of just a continuation of what's been happening, where there'll be people that don't want to work for somebody unless they're getting something out of it. They're not just going to blindly run themselves into the ground for a job that doesn't care about them. And so to me, it looks like that'll create some, continuation of inconveniences of accessibility to certain materials, things taking longer, that sort of thing. It just looks like a sort of a small step forward in that way, where people are still trying to kind of fight for their own rights and freedom and to have a good life. And also that people will want to have more purpose-driven careers, whether that's entrepreneurship, or whether that's just bringing more purpose into whatever their chosen career field is. It looks like being conscious and aware in whatever they do, bringing meaning and purpose into it, will be important. And it to me looks like that those workforces will try to kind of shift and get the power back for them, and give people enough to keep them, but not so much to where they're actually kind of living the lives that they want. So it looks like there's still sort of a battle and some games going on there. People hold on to that money wound tighter than anything else. And so getting out of that one is a trickier one for most people. And so I don't see that making a ton of progression, but that there will be some recognition of the workers realizing that they have the power, that they're the ones that are actually making those businesses succeed. So a little bit that I could see happening there. I was noticing that with the whole space race and everything there, to me, it doesn't look like the technology is going to advance very much in this next year per se, in its capability. But to me, it looks like there's some sort of distinct shift around how they're leveraging it and communicating about it. And to me, it looks like they have some sort of plan to kind of take a next step, not just having their rocket ships for sort of, commercial joyrides, but that they're going to try to be leveraging it in a little bit of a different way. But to me, it looks like they're not really totally organized, ready, prepared, have the resources, permission, things like that. And so to me, it doesn't look like there's any huge major advancements there, other than some sort of political aspect within this space race that looks like it might have something going on with it. And for some reason, to me, there's almost, when I look at that, there seems to be some connection to the military, and it might be more of a secret connection that's unspoken, but there seems to be some sort of exchange of either money or material between the people running the independent space races. And to me, it almost looked like foreign militaries, but maybe that's a stretch, but there's definitely some sort of exchange going on there. And yeah, it's almost like they want to leverage the things they've already invested in a way where they can make money back on it. That way they can continue on what they see their mission to be. But really, they're just stepping into agreements and relationships that are pulling them into a danger zone that they don't really know how to navigate and get out of. And to me, that looks like mostly on like the Elon Musk side of it. I don't see that as much with the other one, Virgin Galactic or whatever it's called. That one looks like it's a little more steady, a little more independent, that it's kind of holding the vision and not wanting to deal with outside people beyond a certain point. And yeah, it looks like that one has a very different energy to it. But anyway, that's what I was seeing there.
So many interesting things. Yeah, it was interesting to hear you talk about the space race. For me, there was something that was coming up that's kind of related, but it's this idea of leveraging kind of ways of making food or survival in harsh climates that is actually going to be put in practice more on Earth. So more of an interest of, okay, we've been developing some things that make sense on other planets, but now our planet is kind of in a direction where some climates are going to need more of a survivalist mentality. So it's kind of this uptick in interest of not dissimilar to early COVID when it was like hoarding food, but kind of on a more intrigue hobby level, like, okay, how could I use what's being used in space here? Or can I use that farming technology in a new way now instead of postponing it for future planets? It's like, if they've had all these investments, why not try to use them here and now? And along with that, I was feeling like more grassroots efforts and kind of this connection of people around the world in different environments kind of self-reporting to each other of what's going on and what they're seeing, and kind of becoming a little more connected to that than regular news channel outlets, which is kind of cool to see. It's like, oh, this is on the grassroots level of what's going on here. Let me get this really firsthand view. So seeing more of that and seeing how empowering that can be to people. There was another thing. Oh, yes. When you were talking about like the financial state, I was curious. I was like, let's tune in to what that energy looks like. And the first thing that was coming up was like this dam just breaking and water just falling out. And I'm curious if that will be kind of recognizing this abundance in natural materials, or if it's more along the lines of more structures kind of collapsing and no going back. I'm seeing this kind of around debt energy too. In a way, there's a little bit of relief and freedom. It felt like, oh, I could breathe. All this resources that were like being hoarded somewhere, there's some of it that's coming out. That's one possibility, but I can see there's so much kind of resistance or fighting that. Of course, the people in power really don't want it to come to that, but as like a collective mock-up, we're all kind of wanting that to fall apart so we can have a bit of a blank slate. So even if it doesn't happen, I think more people are going to be talking about it, thinking about what it would look like to have a deeper sense of safety and relief, and more interested in pushing past the fear. Like that fear has always been there and it's really strong, but it's pushing so hard that it's kind of like, we can't stay in this. Like we can't just keep being in this deep energy. It may not be all the population, but a strong enough amount that they're really interested in breaking free. And that could tie back to career as well, maybe more co-op styles, and seeing, okay, how can we pull our resources together, our creativity together? How can we become more self-sufficient, like independent tribes in a little bit of way? And it might just be a few and really small, but the kind of inspiration and message that it's going to send to the world is really what's going to finally start shaking things up. And of course, there's going to probably be a lot of backlash to that, but the seed will be planted. I see it as a strong year for these seeds that have been kind of bubbling under the surface to finally start seeing like the first leaf, the first bit of energy come up to the surface. And you're like, wow, I knew that something was percolating for a long time. And finally, there's this tiny bit of evidence, no matter how small. And by like bringing as much validation to that, and as much like, wow, even the smallest of successes, like that's so huge. And really at a personal level too, and the day-to-day life, really acknowledging like, wow, I really went through this hard thing. I really have been investing in myself. I'm finally really feeling that. And the more you can celebrate, like the more it grows and gets more magnetized and bigger. So that's really exciting to see too.
Hmm. Yeah, awesome. And one thing I was noticing about the food part of that too that you were talking about is it almost looks like where certain um like animals, certain livestock and certain even vegetables and various things will to me, I saw a little bit of this last year and it didn't really come in the way that I saw it until actually just now here in December. But I'm seeing more of it where there's going to be some sort of perceived limitation within farming and within certain products. And to me, it looks like part of that sort of like astronaut food type of an image you were getting, to me, looks like sort of where they'll want to control food and have it be a little bit more lab made, have it be in a little bit more of a controlled environment, where there will be maybe some advertising of like, okay, we're regenerating certain plots of land by moving this to the lab type of a thing. But to me, there looks like even that control energy around seeds and just agriculture in general, that doesn't look like it's really the best for everyone's health. The other thing that I was seeing too is it looks like with COVID and the threat of World War III and everything like that, that chemical manufacturers have been on full permission to experiment and create, to try to create new weapons, to try to create new biological, weapons type of things, medicines, various different things, some for more holy purposes than others, but really none of them are that great. But anyway, I see that chemical soup that's being manufactured and is in full blast, I see that having some problems. I see that, I don't know whether it's having some leaks, whether they just sort of are spreading that throughout the environment because they have to get rid of some of it that they've created. But I do see there being some chemical disturbances within the environment. And I was also seeing there being smoke in the air. And it didn't just look like regular smoke. I mean, to me, that looks like there will be some fires and that sort of a thing. But to me, it kind of looked more toxic, whether those fires hit certain chemical plantations or whether those fires are from explosions. But at some level, to me, it looked like air quality could have some concerns in certain areas in particular. And to me, it looks like even some countries that are trying to kind of get back on their feet could get hit by some of that stuff too. And kind of moving in that direction of looking at some of those environmental energies, to me, I was just seeing that there's maybe going to be some interesting findings within the ocean and kind of around it. And I'm not entirely sure what those are. To me, it looks like there'll be different discoveries underwater, as well as different discoveries of ways that we can work with the ocean in the sense of needing to clean certain parts of it up, but also resources that we can get from it. Some of what I was saying about like food getting contaminated and having to be more lab grown and controlled, I could see some of that happening with fish as well. And there just being some stuff going on there. Otherwise, environmentally, to me, it looks like, well, I don't know if it's much crazier than 2022 has been, but it does look like there'll still be, some volcanic activity, and that there'll still be, just the regular disturbances that we get hit with. But the thing that maybe stands out a little bit more to me when I look at the environmental energy is, I would say that there looks like there could be interaction with sort of species or kind of creatures on the earth that maybe people weren't totally aware of were here. And some of that is maybe along the lines of new aquatic species, some jungle species, a little bit of that. But to me, it looks like there may even be just a totally new type of creatures that we're sort of interacting with. And to me, it looks like most of that will be hushed, and that the reportings of that will only come out if it's on a personal level and gets shared before they get, muted. But it does look like it will be happening, that there'll be a little bit of this, okay, here's some beings that have been on Earth that now we're getting closer to their sort of area, or them closer to us, and some interaction there. And to me, that looks like can have some health concerns for humans. It can't always be super great. But again, that looks like it'll mostly be hushed, and it'll just kind of be in the background here and there for people that are in those areas and know about it a little bit more, and that they'll try to keep people from those areas. So again, more fun control going on here in 2023. But to me, there also looks like there'll be a bounce back of community and people wanting to do stuff together and not allowing the isolation and separation to happen, that there'll be a little bit more of people wanting to do retreats, people wanting to come together, people wanting to find a way to make community work despite the various different limitations, and that people will want to kind of band together, work together, that sort of thing. And that there'll be a continuation of education within the internet, and that both on a self-help level, on an entrepreneurial level, and also on a spiritual level, that forms of media will help to carry messages and learnings and teachings to people, and that there will be an acceleration of people's consciousness where there's being just these little seeds planted all the time. And while some of them aren't great, there will be a lot that does help move people into a more open-minded direction, and into a direction of being able to help themselves or be more self-reflective, introspective, that sort of thing. And to me, the whole meditation, spirituality, that whole realm will continue to grow in interest with people and awareness with people, and that it'll be seen as, not totally valid, but it'll get a little more merit in this year too, just making that incremental step forward.
Definitely. I see kind of a mix of things coming together in this visual of this like neon green kind of acid trip energy, this Earth's ayahuasca trip in a way. And it looks like a lot of the southern hemisphere kind of lighting up in this neon sludge color in a way. And then also like the Amazon, the lungs of the earth being attacked. So it's this pressure of breath, and then people finding deeper connection in like breath work. So it's like this real yin and yang kind of imagery with everything that happens. There's like a pushback of something beneficial that occurs, even when it may look all really, really gloom and doom, and that might be what gets on the media the most. There is at that grassroots level kind of a more of a connection and awareness of what's going on and how to help each other out. I was seeing something interesting with immigration. It looks like there's going to be maybe either a debate or some sort of push to figure out a more kind of globally easy way to go in and out of countries. Not all of them, but I can see more of a connection or new programs being made so that people can go to different places easier. I also see this as incentives for like scientists, STEM fields to go to parts of the world that are really experiencing climate disasters and to like really band together in these like really powerful research groups. I see that as like a possibility or something that like people would love to see, like people banding together in that way and wanting and caring more about leveraging the most brilliant minds to tackle problems on a global scale rather than, everyone working a little bit more independently or their own nation focused. Seems like there could be a great push for a more global collaboration in that way.
Yeah, some of that might be out of necessity rather than progress, but I see what you're
Yeah.
going with that too. Yeah, that's interesting. So maybe we should move in the direction of economics too, just kind of hit some key topics. And if random stuff comes up as we hit those topics, we can move in that, can do that too. But let's start with economics. Let's take a look at that energy specifically here. To me, I just see this energy of fighting, kind of bickering and communication and polarization of people thinking one thing's going to go one way and that it should go in a different way. And to me, I don't know. I just see this very like, I don't know. It's like a very young soul energy. It's like not really utilizing awareness of like, okay, this is what we've tried time and time again in history. This is what's worked. This is what hasn't worked. Let's actually get the best economic minds together and figure this out. I see kind of the opposite, where it's just everyone kind of trying to grab something for themselves before something collapses, and just kind of this general small-mindedness and chaos within that. And I was kind of trying to see if there's anything interesting within the housing market or the stock market. And to me, it looked like there was ups and downs, but that there wasn't anything that to me looked like total collapse, total reset. And Amber, maybe you'll have a different view on that and what you're seeing there. But to me, it kind of looked like just the chaos and confusion and the actual value of the dollar will all kind of come into question, but that it's not going to be like a total catastrophic, need to sell everything before it's too late type of an energy. There's definitely some things that'll go down in value. The things that are maybe more high risk, high reward look like they could have some troubles, whereas the structures that are a little bit more sort of stable, long term, they've been in place for a while, look like they could do good. But there is an interesting route that I see where one sort of key decision could actually flip-flop that, could actually try to pull that in the complete opposite direction, where it's more of the new stuff that's been coming up that people have been investing in could take off, whereas the old stuff is what starts to fall apart. There's one real turning point that looks like it'll determine whether that happens or not. And even if it does turn and go in that direction, to me, it looks like it'll be with a level of haste and disorganization to where then it'll ultimately sort of collapse more. And to me, it looks like there might just be a lot of political blocking and stoppages and kind of keeping things from going in motion one direction or another, which ultimately keeps it kind of going in the same direction, just with more turmoil. So I'm seeing that. To me, it kind of looks like for people in general, it could be a tough financial year that people might, uh, it's interesting because it kind of depends on the industry. But to me, it looks like in some industries, people won't want to be spending money, whereas others, they will start to see more value in it. And to me, it just looks like there'll still be money in circulation. There'll still be an economy that's happening and going around, but that it won't necessarily be the most abundant year that everyone sees. There's going to be a couple people that skyrocket off the backs of others, but to me it looks like another somewhat turbulent year for personal finances for people. But I'll let you speak about what you're seeing.
Yeah, and there's just like one image that's sticking, and I think it relates a lot to what you're saying. It's like this giant inflated coin that's just standing still. It's like this big inflation. It's like this could flip one way or the other. It's round. It's like a continuous of the same kind of things that we've been seeing more and more of. Let's see if there's anything else interesting about it. Okay, so part of what I'm getting is that people's relationships with money and how they view it might change in terms of value. Whereas, the coin has ruled for so long, it stayed the same. It's not helping people as much as they want. So I see this turn of value into kind of what can be made or restored, or value in kind of personal health more than money necessarily. It's like, okay, if I don't have a lot of control over this one area, and that's where I'm getting all my value and all my worth, I'm going to need to be supported by other systems in other areas of my life. So it's like, if I can't really change this, what else can bring me value and worth? And I'm also seeing more like community, like trading clothes, trading books, kind of getting a little bit more clever. It's like, all right, seeing the same thing as always, so we might as well change. We might as well shift our relationship with money. We might as well just find ways to have value in life that doesn't feel like a nonstop circle, a nonstop grind. It's also giving it space, I think. Kind of this energy of making peace with it to a certain extent, just so you can like function on a day-to-day basis, and it's looming so much. It's more like, oh, let's just imagine that as like a mountain back there. It's always been there. It's gonna stay there. Let me just focus on my own field and my own universe and kind of nourishing that, and just kind of waiting it out and seeing how that might change, but really just honing in on what value you can bring to yourself.
Yeah, totally. I really like that part too about what you said of the increase in people trading and kind of utilizing their connections, and whether that's in a bartering sense or other various ways. I was seeing that energy too of being able to take back some of their economic power, and just being creative, because there's kind of this cobalty, it's kind of a darker blue that wants to kind of control the whole financial institutions and just the way people look at it and see it. And you could say that there's a general conditioning or programming around it that would have people kind of be numb and assumative with how they see money in the world, and how much they can have and how they can use it and everything like that. And to me, it looked like that level of creativity and working together was kind of a good remedy for getting out of that conditioning that's really heavily put on everybody. So I think that's cool. To me, I was also seeing something that I'm not entirely sure what it was, but it seemed to have to do with the housing market, not in the sense of the homes people are living in, but more in the terms of rental properties. And to me, it almost seemed like there could be some sort of disturbance in like with the people that own a large amount of properties, and they've made it a little bit more like commercial to just, own a bunch of them and rent them out short term, make profit off of them, versus people who are more individuals that own it and have more of a homier touch with it and want it for themselves. And it's not entirely clear what the exact disturbance is, but it almost seems like where people could want to fight to have rules and regulations around how many properties, one investment company can own, type of a thing, so that it's not totally monopolized. And I don't see it working itself out in 2023 by any means, but I see there being the start of something that comes into the air and starts to move around in that regards. So you probably won't see proof of that too much in 2023. It'll probably be a little bit later on, but it's stemming up. But anyway, let's move along to maybe the politics side of it, see if there's anything interesting there, foreign politics or local. To me, it looks like more distrust between the people and the politicians, where it hits more at a safety level, where people are willing to put up with stuff as long as it doesn't directly affect them and it's not in their backyard. To me, it looks like there could be threat of it being in the backyard type of a thing that makes people care more and want to take more action to do something about it. Not that they necessarily will, because they'll still be focused on kind of making their own life work and surviving and things of that nature. But it does look like there will be more kind of outrage and questioning and talking back against certain decisions and finding ways to kind of take power back into their own hands to some extent too. And to me, it looks like there may even be some what would the word be, intercontinental relationships between citizens where they're helping each other out, showing love, having communication, and kind of trying to pave their own path to helping people rather than being at war with them or going against them or various different things like that. And to me, it looks like being able to pass along information and communication between different countries would be really helpful amongst the people. And there may even be a way in which technology aids that and helps make people that aren't bilingual able to communicate with different languages easier. There is the potential for something like that to happen. It doesn't look like the most obvious path right now, but some potential there. But anyway, that's the main thing I'm seeing with politics. To me, it kind of seems like there could be a little bit of an unmasking there too, where there's a little bit of more insight into how certain policies and things are influenced by outside people. And to me, it almost looks like even slip-ups of communication in public forums and in front of people, and just a little bit of things where it's like harder to hide and get away with. And the interesting thing is I see a ton of extraterrestrial energy when I look at this political energy for next year. And I didn't expect that at all, but it's really showing up there. And I don't want to get too deep into a far out conspiracy or anything in this video, but there is definitely an influence from outside entities, beings, whatever you want to call them, that you could say where it's not that there's one set of beings that totally controls all politicians, but rather there's multiple that are kind of trying to steer things in the direction that they want to, control things in a certain way, and where some of the more good guy beings have kind of stayed back out of the way, have played more of a passive role, not wanting to infringe upon humanity's free will. But to me, it looks like there will actually be some level of infringement behind the scenes where the good guys are coming in to help a little bit with that. to kind of say, okay, these more malicious or self-interested beings that are working behind the scenes have gone too far, even for them to watch. So how that'll show up will probably be in a way that's not obvious or seen by most people. That'll probably be more of a background thing. But you may see it in sort of the manipulation of news, and the manipulation of certain politicians' health, and kind of how they're showing up. Yeah, there could even be an energy of sort of attempted rebellion, attempted harm on certain politicians. I don't know that it'll hit the person that they want it to, that it'll affect the right person necessarily, but that it might come to more of a public awareness that there's at least, somewhat of an attack that's happening there. Yeah, so anyway, I'll let Amber share as she sees here.
Very interesting. There's two funny images that like stayed up for me when you're describing everything that was going on. And the first one is like an onion, and specifically like chopping into it and like crying from it. Like the truth is painful, or like unmasking what's going on is painful. And this kind of getting this information kind of stings a little bit. So that was kind of funny to see. And the other main picture I was seeing was like this clue board and like this global game of like, all right, who done it? Like, was it this leader in the ballroom with the rope or the gun? Just that imagery of like people banding together to try to actually piece together what's really going on, and like taking more of an interest in kind of personal detective or like solving things, bringing more evidence to light, especially if anyone notable like happens to die, or there's any like suspicious attempts. It's stirring up a lot more intrigue to get to the bottom of it, and a lot more distrust from the media. Like the media feels very like harsh and not true, and like you're just getting more and more of like those layers of onions. It's like it all looks the same. It's not really getting to the truth. So it's like stepping away from the media and going more sleuthing, more like individual detectives. I could see some podcasts maybe popping up that are really interested in kind of debunking things or getting to the root of what's actually going on. It'll still be more on kind of the non-spiritual awareness and more like factual evidence, versus like people really seeing the true energy behind what's going on there. That's definitely for a select audience, but definitely more on like, all right, what's the evidence that can be put to the front of the table for this?
Yeah, cool. I like that. That's awesome. Let me just scan real quick, see if there's anything else that seems important on the political side of thing, if there's any sort of policies or things that are worth noticing. Well, I don't know why, but to me, it almost seems like there's a level of wanting to take away certain human rights, which sounds counterintuitive, that we would be going in the wrong direction with that. But I guess that shouldn't be so surprising, given things, because it even looks like at certain levels, statewide levels, there's even like wanting to take away certain ethnicity or racial groups, or just people in the LGBTQ plus community. I just see there being some sort of, you could almost say, punishment or pushback in almost trying to take away certain rights and kind of control people's autonomy for their own health and their own decision making and things like that. To me, I just see again another level of control that's kind of coming in there, even at that level. And to me, there also seems to be an energy that, and this one might kind of be a constant, but there's an energy of distraction, of kind of look over here while we do something over here. And kind of this whole thing of, well, if you're not aware of it, then you can't change it, and it gets to affect you and have a big impact. And so to me, it looks like there's again, more smoke and mirrors, and kind of look over here while we do this, which has been going on forever. But they're kind of having to get a little bit more creative with it. And yeah, I see that there's some sort of like scarcity and scare tactics that they could use to kind of be able to keep certain levels of political control going. So using things that could potentially be, harmful or damaging to people to say, okay, well, now we need to do something that's for your own good, but really it's not. I see kind of more of that they could try to play with and utilize, since it's sort of worked well for them so far using that tactic. Otherwise, um, that's kind of the majority of what I see. Um, yeah, should we move on to a new category?
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome. What's the next one you want to look at for 23?
Let's take a look at kind of pop culture.
Okay.
See what's there.
To me, there's looks like there's an energy of conflict between the celebrities and the people managing, handling, sort of
Mhm.
employing them at a bigger level, that sort of a thing, where some of them will want to kind of be more individualistic, sort of branching off from the hands that feed them, kind of wanting to go in a different direction, whereas some will be under a tighter grip by the industry itself and the people that are running it and paying them and keeping them in fame and everything like that. And so to me, it looks like there's, yeah, again, more of that control back and forth game, and where we might see certain people really speaking out against some of the things that are going on in the backgrounds, and some of the ways in which they sort of things that they could attribute to their fame, and that sort of thing. So you could say kind of like more Kanye moments, except for there might be some people that have a little bit more emotional, mental stability and aren't attacking other people while bringing forth truth, that they're doing it in a little bit more of a conscious way. And so I just see some kind of turbulence within that. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was seeing a lot of like those claw machines and like arcade games and just like general mechanics whizzing around. Ticketmaster definitely like kind of came up very clear audience for me. It was very much like these like really soul sucking, money hungry companies that are just really upsetting people. And there's going to be more things that break down and more just very obvious, like this isn't working. This is like really damaging everyone involved except for these select people, and just like wanting to get off the ride in a way, and kind of like creating your own amusement parks, your own channels and streams, and really wanting to rebel against that. But it is still kind of like this heavy, clanky, really slow energy. So there might be like pockets of people who are moving really quickly around it and like disrupting it in like small ways. But it's like, what do we do with this large infrastructure? How do we deconstruct it or move it? It seems very like still in a way. Like it's just like this junkyard of trying to like go through this trash and trying to find like how do we actually clear it out, what is the solution. So a lot more kind of debate, more creative solutions coming up. But see that being like a very like long-term problem to solve. But definitely more interest in movement than has happened before, perhaps. I think it's like a similar energy to those seeds starting to sprout that I was mentioning earlier. It's like, all right, this is the year that things are really starting to show the change and show the cracks and show what's coming next. Because we have been in such a binary, really polarizing, battling energy, really just a lot of heaviness. And now it's like, all right, here's some peaks of light coming through. Here's a little bit of just the initial phases of like a really lots of huge transformation projects to come in the next even like decade or so. But I think we'll look back at this year is one of more pivotal years for the very beginning of those things.
Yeah, totally. I see that energy of people that are in the spotlight, sort of speaking on their own personal journey and certain things that they overcome within their own mental, emotional health, and kind of spiritual things that help keep them in alignment and healthy too. And so I see some growth in that area. To me, it looks like the entertainment industry as a whole, there'll be some trying to like renew past stories and shows and just things to kind of keep people in the past of like, oh, this is where you felt safe, this is where you felt comfortable, this was your childhood, or this was your, teenage years. Is something in the past, and there'll be some people that are trying to kind of play that into people's minds. And
Mm.
then there'll be some energy of people that are creating content, movies, whatever, around people with powers, abilities, sort of otherworldly things, and there'll be some exposure to kind of more of that side of things too, and that there'll be some like psychological or some at least on the outside, more like depth, like kind of how there's movies that are more like The Matrix, for example. It looks like there'll be some popularity in those type of films where it's kind of teaching you something, or there's sort of an underlying message to it. And so there'll be some people making those, and some people trying to keep people just sort of stuck in the past, and some content that comes out that'll be more of like, I don't know, you could just say violent, sort of fear-based, sort of primordial type of content too, coming at people. But there does seem to be some interesting energy of like a underlying new phase that it's moving in. And I kind of want to take a look at that, see if I can, you can read whatever you want next while I look at this a little deeper here.
Great. Yeah, I definitely agree with your saying the mix of nostalgia and new, and even WandaVision comes up for me with that. Like
Mhm.
someone wanting to stay in the past, wanting to kind of control the reality and try to comfort themselves with things they have lost, but like they have a lot of power and strength as well. I see a lot of embracing like our inner dark side and really becoming seen a lot of like shadow self narratives and really seeing that be kind of glorified in a way, but in a really empowering way. Like, yeah, I have these attributes, I have this dark side, I have this personality, but now I can embrace it. Now it's like sexy and cool to do it. Almost seem like a bit of like dominatrix energy. It's like taking your power back, at least in how you're presented or how you show up on social media, as a way of trying to find some sort of power and control in your life, by even if it's just emulating a character or tapping into that. I see it as something that gets people excited, like, oh, I can actually be this version of myself. I can dress how I want to dress in this way, and like, look at this character. They've like really overcome. They have a lot of flaws, but a lot of strength, and I can really see myself in them. So I see like a lot of relatable characters coming through even more, and kind of fandoms as their own. supportive communities as well. Like really having that help is like an inspiring North Star for how people want to express themselves and enjoy how they interact with each other, and get really excited about this kind of escapist universe. But it's not the same energy of like nostalgia and like watching the same show again and again. It's more like, ooh, this is kind of creative. Let me like create some fan fiction about this. Let me do this spin-off, or create like a similar group perhaps as one of these shows if they see like a really cool group dynamic they like as well. I definitely see some good nuggets of inspiration in the next year.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do see this. I think one of the words you used was escapism, and I do see this energy of of extreme escapism in action, and there being people that get really stuck in feeling like there's just nothing that they can do and that it's hopeless. They don't really have the tools, information, or just they're not in the position to be able to move forward in the ways they want to. So I see some people taking that as a sign to give up, whereas some people take it as a sign to surrender and make peace with what they can and change what they can. And some people will rebel. But I do see it's interesting because to me it almost looked like there was a like less people using drugs, but more people dying per user who use them and having issues with them. And I just kind of include that in pop culture because I think substance abuse is very intermixed in that. And that is part of what'll feed some of this escapism of getting more obsessed with technology and entertainment and things that they can escape into and have a totally different experience of reality than the one that they feel they can't control. And so to me, it looks like there will be some people both in like media and celebrities that are more honest, like I was saying, about their actual journeys that feel like they have to come forth. And part of that'll be because they're trying to help people not off themselves or go down these really dark places. Because to me, it looks like it's going to be a year of emotional intensity and where people have the capacity for great growth, but also for pretty big destruction as well if they don't sort of move in the direction that they need to, spiritually speaking. So I'm just seeing that being influenced in the whole thing too. And I would say I see like a caring culture that can actually come forth from that, and where certain people that are successful, whether it's an online business or otherwise, I just see this level of where some of those people that succeed will be using like referral marketing more, where they'll be leaning into each other, will there be some connectivity and kind of like sharing and like networking in more of a true way, rather than this hyper individualist sort of like, it's me against the world. A buck to them is a buck that is out of my pocket type of a thing. I see there being more of like, no, it's got to be a little bit more connectivity and referring to each other, and how you can actually build and power and momentum and give somebody the more full picture of what they need, so you can actually serve a broader audience while serving people deeper, and that it can all kind of work together rather than against each other. And of course, I don't see that as being a perfect solution happening in 2023, but I do see it moving in that direction a little bit more, where people are more loving and open with each other. And some of that comes from that desperation and isolation. People might start to reconnect with their family. They may start to reconnect with friends that they had pushed away sort of in the last couple of years. There may be some like, okay, things are pretty tough here, and there's got to be more grace to sort of accept people and connect to them and to work together, because otherwise this is just going to be too much. So I see a little bit of that happening, and the people that stay in isolation or aren't able to have any of that support and connectiveness, those are the ones that are going to have a real hard time making it. Yeah.
I totally agree. Forgiveness was a big word that was coming up as you were saying that too. Just letting things go and not having to hold grudges as tightly, and like this painful barbed wire imagery wrapped around oneself. It's like, just take this off. Let's just rest in a field of flowers. Let's just literally do anything but keep torturing ourselves or others with these kind of painful damnations and judgments that can just be let go.
Mhm.
It's cool to see.
It's kind of like where some things feel like it's suppressing, they're also helping. Like say, oh, now we can't afford to rent a beach house by ourselves for vacation. Oh, we're going to invite two other families, to
Mhm.
accommodate it. And now all of a sudden they're coming together more. Oh, this part of my life on a physical human level is out of control. Oh, great. That's now teaching me how to have my own spiritual sovereignty and control at a deeper level. And so I see just a huge exponential for spiritual growth, which on the other side of that is huge, potential for pain. So, it's going to be really how people choose to see it. And that's a big thing that I see in 2023 is
Mhm.
people's six chakras, their how they see the world and their place in it, and how they're able to view things, their beliefs, their what they're seeing. It's going to make a huge difference in what they're experiencing, how they're taking their reality and how they're moving through that. And so I do see a level of sort of psychic awareness rising, or the potentiality for people to, just clear their old beliefs, to be able to see things in a different light and to not take it so personally.
Yes, I see a kaleidoscope image really strongly when you're saying that. Just like everyone looking through this. All right, let's shake it up. Let's see something new. Let's look at another thing. It's like trying on different narratives. Like, what's the most empowering version of this story we can tell? What's the like best outcome that we can look at for what we're in currently? It's just
Mhm.
this constant kind of destroying and creating something new to figure out, okay, what's just gonna be the most beneficial story that I can tell myself, just to help me get through, or to see how this could benefit me, and try to get like a new curiosity about it, versus just being like, all right, I'm a victim again, I'm stuck again, I'm hurt again. It's like that's just not working. There's a big theme of that in 2023, is like this energy of, oh, this is just not working and we know it's not working. Let's finally see that shift a little bit. Let's finally try on something new.
Mm, yeah. And maybe that's a good segue into the next thing to look at. Maybe we look at relationship dynamics for people next year. How's that sound?
Yeah, we could do that. And then after that, you want to finish with any channeling or external communication you want to bring in?
Uh-huh. Yeah, sounds good. So with relationships, we kind of spoke to it already, but I'm just seeing that there's a level of where people will take a little bit more of an introspective look at how their relationship to themselves and their relationship to their own trauma is affecting and creating their relationships with other people. And some people will, of course, not do that. They'll resist that and still kind of want to make it everybody else's fault. And those people will have a hard time in relationships in this year, versus the people that are able to balance uh, having their moments of going within, kind of hermiting, so they can get, so they can process and heal through their own trauma. They can recalibrate with, okay, this is me, this is my energy versus somebody else. But some people will then get lost in that and think they, have to stay in that place to not have the drama or tension. But the people who are able to go back and say, okay, I do a little work on myself. Now I test it in the world, see how it goes. Okay, that's some feedback. Now I do some work on myself, and they can be really seamless. For some people, they have to make it more of a defined, like, okay, these 2 weeks I'm staying in completely, and then next month I'll try, going out. Where some people it's more seamless day to day. But I do see a level of that, and where people are the people that are overwhelmed by their life and overwhelmed by communication that's coming at them all the time, like people that are working in service jobs, customer service, where they're very customer based and getting a lot of communication, that can be overwhelming for them, and they don't have as much time and space to process that and heal through those relationships. And for them, things might feel really hard. But for people who are able to get enough distance from the energy of it all and from the intensity of the communication that's happening at a nonverbal level from people, they will start to see relationships shift and change, and where they'll have new opportunities to finally break age-old patterns and move forward in a way that feels healthier and more aligned, and that there can actually be a pretty steady growth in that area for people. So it does look very individually based, but that there is, I don't know, I again see a lot of energy around family too, and where there is sort of more of a focus on family, nuclear and otherwise, than before. And so there's moments for healing, for coming back to some wholeness, having more communication, that sort of thing within family dynamics too.
Yes, I see that totally. And one big image that's showing up for me for relationships is like this cellular atom kind of molecule, this under a microscope, you're seeing this organism. And there's like two sides of this for me. One is this a very clear, like, okay, at a biological level, getting more in touch with where trauma is stored or how things have impacted family lineages and what's been passed down, and people getting more curious about that or breaking through patterns. And the other side of that, I'm seeing people as kind of understanding their strengths and weaknesses within relationships with each other, instead of 50-50 traditional trying to make everything fair. It's more like, all right, I'm really good at this one thing, I have a lot of energy I can contribute here, let me pick up the slack here, and where I have this weakness, like, you're going to bring in your strengths, and it's going to be more complementary versus like, oh, you owe me this for that and I owe you this for that. It's more being like, all right, let's realistically come together with our strengths and weaknesses, and play more into that, and play more into what we like to do and how we like to help each other and contribute, versus like the scoreboard mentality. And I see that in families, in relationships, and that comes from that deeper understanding of oneself and kind of being able to reflect and be honest, and also level up your communication about it too. A lot of these things are unfamiliar. It may feel like a scientific language that you have to learn and be an expert on. So something to be said for having some softness and compassion when it comes to understanding and communicating these needs, so that you can kind of practice and test it out without it being this extreme blame and punishment game. It can be more, okay, we're on this experiment together, we're trying this out together, we're seeing if this dynamic works or that dynamic works. And because we're in it together, it's not like this big blame. It's more like, we want this all to work, so let's just figure out the best way forward.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. More space for all of that to be sort of assessed, communicated, figured out, for those that don't just fall into the pain of ego, get lost in it. Yeah, that's great. That's amazing. Um, Thank you. Okay, shall we talk to our prospective extraterrestrial friends for our finishing information here?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm talking to these Pleiadian beings, and I already spoke to it a little bit, but they're telling me that they're gonna be able to take a little bit more of a step in helping humanity, and that part of what they're gonna be able to do is remove some of the unseen forces that create a level of darkness and suffering within the structures of the world. And so we'll see a little bit of that unraveling. And I do see like their help bringing up old ancient wisdom from within on sort of a um, earthly level. What they're bringing it up within the oceans, and primarily, and that's where they're going to start. But the earth and everything on it is all part of the same one consciousness. And so as they're clearing out energies of fear and control and bringing up this old ancient wisdom energy within the oceans and certain land masses that are less populated, it's affecting that part of our consciousness that is those oceans. And so it's that subconscious or even deep, more closer to unconscious part of our mind. And so I see that that effect is going to help people to have the potentiality to wake up more. But then they're also going to be there on sort of a spirit guide level where they're not going to infringe upon other people in their lives, but they're going to be there to almost hold a hand out. And for those that are able to realize, sometimes when they come in to help people, people's minds will start to race. They'll start to feel biological or like, things within their body that start to change and feel kind of weird. And a lot of times people will then just go into absolute resistance to them and say, okay, no, I don't want to experience whatever's happening here. It doesn't feel good. But what they're telling me, and this is just their perspective, I'm not saying whether or not it's right or wrong, but they're saying that for those who are ready for their help and can kind of allow a little bit of discomfort ability, that they'll help them to sort of raise in consciousness and to let go of certain blockages and to kind of give them, you could say, light codes or information that's helpful to their success. And they're working with people at sort of upper level. It's sort of like you could say in dream time, or sometimes we talk about it as the second story. If you imagine like a spiritual realm that's kind of operating above the physical realm, they're really working with people at that level and kind of helping them to see the bigger picture of humanity and just their own heritage and everything that's capable for them. And I don't personally see them as having all the answers or being senior better to humans, or that we always need to lean on them, that they have to save us. None of that. Sometimes they kind of depict that as being the story, but that's not really honoring the human experience and how capable and senior of a form we really are. Senior meaning that we have within us the spiritual capabilities to do everything that they're doing and to be at that level of consciousness and everything like that. We're in a great position, actually. But for a lot of people, their help can be useful. And it's not something where it's so obvious as to how to connect with them and how to allow that help to come in. And so I'm asking them, well, what's the next step? How would they know other than, okay, if you're feeling uncomfortable, don't immediately push it away, but kind of say hello to it and see what images come to mind, what feelings are there, what's trying to be communicated and expressed, what other ways can they connect to you and get that help. Let me tune in and hear what they say. Amber, if you want to speak for your beings in the meantime.
Yeah, I have my Palladian friend here as well. A lot of similar things. I've seen a lot of ancient wisdom, a lot of imagery with the pyramids and like sacred geometry, and as well as like the musical triangles. So a lot more interest in how different wavelengths of music and audio can kind of help optimize or heal. A lot of that coming to the surface. And I did see that they were working really closely with a lot of like really young children, babies. Some people might call them like star seeds. But I see almost like this child genius energy coming through that provides this like childlike wonder, paired with this really strong intuitive power as well. And that being pretty scary to some people, but then also like really inspiring and intriguing to others. I don't see that on like a super mass level, but kind of individually. People might know of someone who know of someone who's like this, and they are really excited or interested in hearing these stories about what they have to share and are more open to that wisdom. Yeah, definitely see a lot with ocean systems as well and diving into the subconscious, a lot of things coming to the surface. They're also showing me a lot of like doors and portals and becoming more aware of kind of the space you're in, what you're walking through, and things getting to be kind of trippy in a way. So it becoming more important to kind of up that level of awareness to realize, oh, where am I at right now? Where's my energy? Where's my attention? To avoid this kind of like flipping around, kind of time travel-y type energy, just getting kind of disoriented a bit. So, working with how to ground and stay connected with these kind of like ancient remedies while also stretching the clairvoyant sense too. It seems like this very nice complementary way of just kind of helping to heal and empower what we've already been doing as well.
Mhm. Yeah, awesome. I love that. And my Pleiadian beings had said through meditation and sound was how you can connect with them and move forward in working with them. Um, yeah, and so if you need help with that, as a viewer of this video, feel free to message me. You can leave me a comment just letting me know that you want help connecting with those beings, with meditation or with sound, or shoot us a message at AwakenW Brandon on Instagram. But the Lemurian beings that are standing over here talking to me were saying that they're kind of going to help clear out emotional blockages and create a little bit of space for humanity to get clear on some of their trauma and stored emotions that have been causing them certain turmoil. And so there's kind of, they describe it as a flushing out of the lower astral planes. And the best way I can describe that is it's almost like in those lower astral planes, there's beings with and without bodies that are stuck on sort of survival, a lot of fear, that are stuck on, sort of dysfunctional sexuality energy, really intense emotionality. And they're kind of reminding me almost of that story of Noah's Ark, of, the flooding of the earth, and how there was a level of flushing out certain unhelpful beings that were just creating too much karma, causing too much trouble, that sort of a thing. And that it's not a literal flooding of the earth that has to happen with water and everything, but rather sort of through that emotional depth, through those emotional waters, and even that deep subconscious part of the mind, that it's going to help to clear out some of that chaos, some of those lower levels of energies that have been plaguing the earth and have kind of got out of hand. And so they're going to help to do some of that clearing. And there's not too much that they ask from us other than doing your own personal work. It's like, yes, clean up the oceans, yes, help the environment, all of that's important, and recognizing that all of that is a reflection of your inner emotional state and spiritual state, and doing that inner work is being very important this year. And so that's their main message to me. There may be some contact with them, but it'd be very like private, personalized, kind of behind the scenes, not super spoken about or publicized, but there may be some more sightings of them as they move around to help with this.
Yes, totally. And I also see that on a personal, like physical water system, like people getting more aware of the water in their body, their lymphatic drainage system, and just getting more curious about how to flush and maintain their own bodies, as kind of a reflection of that clearing of the earth and water. But yes, I agree. That's a beautiful last message from them.
All right, wonderful. Well, I'm complete with that. Any last words from you, Amber? Are you good?
I think that's beautiful.
All right, wonderful. Well, that is our 2023 reading in brief. If you'd like to know deeper specifics, or if you'd like to get a reading on your own path in 2023 and what energies are personally surrounding you in your life, feel free to book a reading with either of us. Again, you can leave a comment below this video, or you can shoot me a message at Awaken with Brandon on Instagram. I can connect you to Amber as well, or you can share what your handle is if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm happy to be connected via Brandon. And I hope you find some inspiration and some motivation in this video.
Woohoo! Happy New Year. Talk to you
Happy
soon.